The suitcase was already in the hallway when Adam came home. He looked at it, then at me. I told him, I am not coming back. My name is Clara Manson. I am 35. I was born and raised in a small coastal town in Maine. When my father died, my mother was left alone with me. She worked nights at the fish processing plant to keep us afloat. College was never an option. As soon as I finished high school, I took a job to help her pay the bills. For years, my life was work. I went from one job to another, learning how to handle customers, organize schedules, and sell. I never had time to think about dreams. Then I stumbled into something that was mine. I started an online platform that arranged culinary tours and cooking workshops across Europe. It began small, one tour at a time, but it grew fast. I worked 16-hour days without complaint. When the first real profits came in, I almost did not believe they were mine. I had gone from worrying about groceries to paying for flights and hotels in advance without a second thought. I was proud of it, but also cautious. I knew what it was like to have nothing. That memory never left me. My biggest fear was to go back to that life. That is why I was careful with my spending. I invested in the business, not in myself. Most of my clothes were years old. I drove the same car I had since my 20s. My luxury was freedom, being able to choose where I lived and what I worked on. When I met Adam Clark, I thought I had found someone who understood that kind of discipline. He was charming, confident, and spoke about building a future together. He had a younger sister, Lauren, who lived with him. From the start, he told me she was family, and that meant she was my family too. I agreed. I knew what it meant to take care of someone. I had done it my whole life with my mother. After we married, I never doubted that I could support both of them if needed. My business was doing well enough to cover more than my own needs. I thought of it as a team effort, me building the income, Adam contributing in other ways, Lauren finding her path again after what he described as a rough patch. Looking back, I realize I never asked enough questions. I was used to taking responsibility. If someone needed help, I stepped in. It was natural to me. The idea that someone might see that as an open invitation to lean on me completely, that possibility did not even cross my mind then. At the time, I believed I was building a life with someone who valued the same things I did. Hard work, loyalty, shared responsibility. I had no idea that the life I was paying for was not the life I thought it was. I had no idea that all my effort, all my discipline, was slowly being drained into something I could not see yet. But I would. By Adam's request, we moved into Lauren's family home in Charleston. She liked to remind people it had been hers, even though the mortgage had been sold years before. She once owned a small coffee shop and spoke about it as if she had managed a global franchise. I worked from a small corner room in the house, running my platform and taking calls at all hours. Most of the household expenses started coming from my account. Adam told me Lauren was just going through a rough time and needed space to recover. I agreed without questioning it. I thought patience would pay off. From the first week, Lauren treated me like hired help. She left lists on the counter, wiped the shelves, do not touch the china collection, call the plumber. The tone was always the same, as if the house belonged only to her and I was an intruder. I stayed quiet, thinking that proving myself useful would change her opinion. Adam was rarely home. He said work kept him busy. When he was there, he avoided arguments and told me not to take things too seriously. Meanwhile, the bills kept coming. Every month, I transferred a fixed amount into the joint account. Adam told me it covered utilities and groceries. I believed him. Lauren always collected the mail. I never saw statements. I had no reason to suspect anything was off. My focus was on my business, and I trusted Adam to handle the household side. He reassured me often, said he was grateful for my support, and that things would even out once Lauren got back on her feet. It was easy to believe him. I had been managing money for so long that I assumed everyone around me understood its value. I did not notice how fast the transfers became routine. I stopped asking if the amount was enough or too much. I just sent it the same day every month. Later, I would learn what those payments really covered. They were not just for electricity or water. They were for new furniture delivered while I was on business trips. They were for credit card balances that were never discussed. They were for weekend getaways Adam said were networking events, and Lauren called well-deserved breaks. But at that time, I did not know any of it. I only saw a house that ran smoothly because I was paying for it, a husband who seemed content to let me handle the hard parts, and a sister-in-law who treated me like a tenant in her old home. I told myself it was temporary. That Adam was right. Lauren would find work again. We would settle into a fair balance, and my role would shift from provider to partner. I told myself I was building stability. I was wrong. The first real crack showed itself over dinner one night. Lauren had cooked, Adam poured wine, and I thought we might actually have a quiet evening. Halfway through the meal, Lauren put her fork down and said, "We are flying to Singapore next month. You will watch the house." It was not a question. I waited for Adam to step in, to at least acknowledge that I might have other plans. He kept eating, eyes on his plate. I told her I was not interested in going anywhere with her constant criticism. She smirked and said I was too sensitive. Adam finally spoke, but not to defend me. He said I needed to let things go and stop taking every comment personally. Something shifted for me in that moment. I realized their trips, their plans, their spending. None of it included me unless I was providing for it. I was there to cover the life they wanted, not to share in it. Over the next weeks, the tension grew. Lauren's comments became more pointed. She talked about how expensive it was to maintain her house, how Adam was under pressure, how lucky I was to have a flexible job. She always said it with a tone that made it sound like my business was a hobby, something that just happened to pay well. I started to notice how closed off everything was. Mail still never came to me. Adam avoided any discussion about money. If I asked about the joint account, he would wave me off, saying, "It is fine. Do not worry about it." I did worry. Not about going broke. My business was still strong, but about the fact that I knew nothing about what I was really funding. I realized I had no access to the account I was paying into. I had no idea how much was in it or what it was used for. Adam had insisted from the start that the account should be in his name only, saying it would be simpler for managing household expenses and avoiding confusion with my business finances. At the time, it sounded reasonable. I was traveling often, juggling clients and staff across time zones. The idea of handling one less set of statements felt like a relief, not a risk. I didn't see that it also meant I had no way to track where the money went. The small signs added up. New chairs appeared in the living room. Lauren had packages delivered almost daily. Adam mentioned networking dinners, but never explained who they were with. None of it connected to what I thought we had agreed on when we married. That dinner conversation about Singapore stayed with me. It was not about the trip. It was about the way she said it, like it was her right to decide my role in the household. And it was about Adam's silence. He had no problem with her making that decision for both of us. I began to understand something I had not wanted to see. This was not a temporary situation. It was a structure, and I was the foundation they were standing on. I did not yet know how far it went, but I was starting to realize that if I wanted answers, I would have to find them myself. The next morning, I decided to stop wondering and confront it directly. Lauren was in the kitchen, scrolling on her phone, a mug of coffee in front of her. I sat down and asked if she could explain what exactly my money was covering. She looked up, pushed my coffee mug away from her side of the table, and said, "That blend is too expensive for someone who never even finished college. You sit on your laptop all day. That is not real work. You live off Adam. You are a burden." The words landed without hesitation, as if she had been waiting to say them. Adam walked in halfway through. I turned to him, expecting he would correct her. He just let out a tired sigh and said, "You need to cool off." Then he opened the fridge like nothing had happened. That was the moment I stopped waiting for things to change. There was no misunderstanding here. They were comfortable with the arrangement. I was the one who had to decide whether to stay in it. I got up from the table, went to the bedroom, and pulled my suitcase from the closet. I packed quickly, laptop, passport, a few changes of clothes. My business had always been online. I could work from anywhere. For years I had spent months at a time in Europe, meeting with chefs and partners. It was the part of my life that had been mine before Adam. I bought a one-way ticket to Portugal. An old friend, a chef I had worked with, had once offered me an apartment in the Algarve if I ever needed it. I had thanked him then and forgotten about it. Now I sent him a message. 2 hours later, I had a set of keys waiting for me. I did not leave in anger. There was no scene, no raised voice. I wheeled my suitcase past Adam in the living room. He asked where I was going. I told him, back to my life. He did not follow me to the door. At the airport, I sent my mother a brief message that I would be traveling for work. I did not mention the fight or the decision. She had worried enough in her life. She did not need another reason. When the plane took off, I felt only clarity. This was not escape. It was a return. 3 months passed. I settled into the apartment in Algarve, working during the day and walking by the ocean in the evenings. My business stayed steady. I kept my focus on clients, not on what I had left behind. Then the call came. It was Lauren. Her voice was thin and unsteady. "Clara, we have bills, collectors, we are drowning. You can help, right?" I asked her what exactly she meant. She started listing things. Utilities overdue, loans in default, credit cards maxed. She said the total was $380,000. I said nothing. She kept going, filling in details I had never heard before. While I had been in Portugal, the household in Charleston had been collapsing. The payments I sent each month had never been just for utilities or groceries. They had been paying the mortgage, the credit card balances, and large purchases. New furniture, first-class flights, shopping trips she called essentials, weekend getaways she described as stress relief. I remembered the packages that showed up almost daily, the new chairs in the living room, the clothes Lauren never seemed to wear twice. I had thought they were using their own money. Now she told me they had used mine, along with credit they could not repay. When I asked where Adam was, she said he was too stressed to talk. 2 hours later, my phone rang again. This time it was him. His tone was urgent, but not apologetic. "You are my wife. You have to help us. We cannot get out of this without you." I asked him how long they had been in this position. He said it had been building for a while, but that he thought things would turn around. He did not say how. He did not mention paying me back. He kept talking, circling the same points: loyalty, commitment, marriage. The longer he spoke, the more I understood that he saw my support as automatic, something owed, not given. When he stopped, waiting for me to agree, I said nothing. I closed my laptop, stepped onto the terrace, and let the sound of the ocean take over. They called again that night. I let it ring. I had spent years thinking of us as a team. But in that moment, it was clear there had only been one person carrying the weight. Adam called again the next morning. This time his voice was louder, as if raising the volume would change my answer. "You cannot just leave us like this," he said. "You are my wife. You are responsible for us." I let him finish. Then I told him I was not transferring a single dollar. His tone shifted from demanding to pleading. He talked about losing the house, about Lauren not being able to handle the pressure, about how everything could be fixed if I just helped one last time. I knew that one last time would never be the last. It had never been before. When he realized I was not moving, he accused me of abandoning my marriage. I told him that what he was asking for was not marriage, it was dependency. He did not answer that. After the call, I shut my laptop, walked out to the terrace, and leaned on the railing. The ocean was loud enough to drown out my thoughts. My phone kept vibrating on the table behind me. I did not go back for it. The rest of that week, messages came in from both of them. Lauren sent screenshots of overdue bills. Adam sent long paragraphs about commitment and trust. Neither mentioned the years I had already covered their lives. Neither admitted fault. At night, I read their messages once, then deleted them. I stopped opening the ones that came during the day. I started blocking numbers, first Lauren's, then Adam's when he began calling from different phones. I had thought the hardest part would be leaving Charleston. It turned out the harder part was holding the line once I was gone. Saying no once is easy. Saying no every day, to the same voices, is something else. I stopped explaining my decision. There was nothing left to explain. By the end of the month, their calls had slowed. I knew it was not because they had accepted my choice. It was because they were looking for someone else to replace me. And for the first time in years, I understood that my absence was the only help I was willing to give. A week later, I was on a plane back to the United States. I had arranged for the divorce papers to be ready. There was no need for a conversation beyond signatures. Adam was waiting at the lawyer's office. He looked thinner, pale, The energy he once had gone. He sat across from me at the table, tapping a pen against the folder in front of him. When the lawyer stepped out to make copies, Adam leaned forward. "Why are you doing this? Why not just pay it off, and we can start fresh?" I looked at him for a moment before answering. "Because I want you to learn to earn your own way." He stared like I had just spoken another language. "You make it sound like I never worked a day in my life." I did not correct him. He knew the truth as well as I did. The difference was that I had accepted it. We signed the papers in silence. The lawyer returned, slid the final copies across the table, and wished us well. Adam muttered something under his breath and walked out without looking back. I stayed in the conference room for a few minutes after he left. It was not to gather my thoughts. It was to give him time to be gone before I stepped outside. When I reached the street, the air felt heavier than I remembered. I walked past the cafes and storefronts without stopping, heading straight for my hotel. My flight back to Portugal was in 2 days, and I did not plan to spend those days in the city where we had built nothing worth keeping. That night, I ignored 2 calls from an unknown number. I had learned they always find new ways to reach you when they want something. The next morning, I left my phone in the hotel safe and went out without it. There was no relief yet, but there was no doubt either. The decision was final. Back in Maine, I went straight to my mother's house. She was on the porch when I pulled in, a blanket over her knees. I sat beside her and told her everything, from moving into Lauren's house, to the months of paying for a life that was not mine, to the last meeting at the lawyer's office. She did not interrupt. When I finished, she stood, held me, and said she was proud of me. There was no debate. It was the first calm I had felt in a long time. I stayed a week. We sorted closets, boxed old paperwork, fixed a leaking tap. I cooked simple dinners and let the phone go unanswered. On the 5th night, I told her I wanted her to move to Portugal with me. She looked at me for a long moment, then nodded. She said she trusted my judgment. That was all. 2 weeks later, we were in the apartment in Algarve. I set her things in the spare room and showed her how the windows stuck if you pushed from the wrong side. We drank tea on the veranda and watched the light fade over the water. She asked if I was sure this was the right choice. I told her yes. I did not try to convince her. I just said it and waited. She believed me. I went back to work the next morning. Emails, schedules, contracts. I set meetings in Lisbon with chefs and suppliers I had not seen in years. I booked trains instead of flights and kept the days tight. No long gaps, no time for second-guessing. My mother took short walks and learned the route to the market. One afternoon near the market, I ran into Marco, the chef who had once offered me the apartment. We had built tours together in the past and left it there when the pandemic changed everything. He asked how long I planned to stay. I said I did not know. He said maybe it was time to build something again. We sat at a small table and talked for an hour. He had a kitchen, staff, and a steady local following. I had routes, partners, and clients who still wrote asking when I would return. He suggested a joint project, seasonal workshops, regional tours, a clean split. It was not a pitch dressed up as friendship. It was work, clear and simple. I took the train home and found my mother reading on the veranda. She asked how the day went. I told her about Marco and the idea. She said it sounded solid. She did not add advice or warnings. She just said it sounded like something I would do well. That night I opened a new file and wrote down what it would take. Dates, kitchens, staffing, insurance, bookings, deposits, margins. No promises to anyone. Only numbers and steps. I closed the file and backed it up. Then I turned off the lamp and listened to the quiet of the apartment. It was enough. My mother was sitting in the shade of the olive tree with a book. I brought my laptop outside, but I did not open it right away. From the terrace, the Atlantic looked calm, and the street below was quiet except for the occasional car. I had the file with Marco's proposal on my desktop. The outline was complete. Dates, locations, budgets, staff requirements. He and I had agreed to meet the following week to walk through a kitchen he wanted to use. I opened the file, scanned the numbers, and closed it again. I did not need to make changes. My phone buzzed once on the table. The number was unfamiliar. I let it go to voicemail. No message came through. Inside, my mother called out to ask if I wanted tea. I said yes and stayed outside, leaning back in the chair. The air was warm, and the sound from the harbor was faint but steady. She brought out 2 cups and sat across from me. We drank in silence for a while. She turned a page. I watched the water. The quiet was unbroken except for a delivery truck stopping in front of the cafe. The driver carried in 2 boxes. Then the street was still again. I thought about Charleston, about the monthly transfers, the packages arriving at the door, the conversations that had been more about control than about partnership. I remembered Adam at the lawyer's office, the way he looked at me as if my refusal was the real betrayal. None of it made me angry anymore. It was finished. I had spent years building something I thought was shared. Now I knew it never had been. The work was mine, the decisions were theirs, and the weight had been on my shoulders alone. My mother set her book down and asked if I was going to meet Marco next week. I told her yes. She nodded once, like she already knew the answer. After she went inside, I opened my laptop again. This time, I went over the plan in detail. How many guests per tour, the cost per person, the deposit schedule. It was work I understood, work that gave back what I put into it. When I finished, I saved the file, backed it up, and closed the computer. The sun had shifted, and the terrace was now half in shadow. I moved my chair into the shade. The view had not changed, water, sky, the line between them. My phone was still on the table, face down. I did not pick it up. My mother came back out, book in hand. She sat without speaking. I stayed where I was, looking at the ocean. The life in front of me was not loud, not complicated, and not shared by anyone who had not earned a place in it. And that was enough. Thanks for listening to the story till the end. Write in the comments what you think about all this. Subscribe. More untold stories are on the way.